Hello and welcome to another edition of Hanging Out with Mark in the Woods. Glad to have you here. Today we're going to be talking about the piriformis, which is a pear-shaped muscle and is one of 6 external rotators in our deep gluteal region. And now you don't typically hear about these other external rotators, and that is for good reason actually, because the piriformis is the only one of the external rotators that actually resides on top of our sciatic nerve. When the piriformis isn't functioning properly, we're typically left with pain in the glutes, and this is typically further aggravated from sitting due to kind of this pinching effect on top of the sciatic nerve. This in conjunction with any time the piriformis is under tension, which is really quite hard to avoid. So in this video, we're gonna restore both length and tension back into our piriformis so we can build healthy hips for the years to come. For our first technique, we're gonna be going through a release technique with a softball, a basketball, or a medicine ball works here as well. And then we're gonna try to create some active length through the piriformis through a integrative stretch technique. So to start with, you're gonna grab your tool of choice, and you're just going to initially just start kind of at the midpoint of the glute. And then what I think about doing is just kind of gently starting to roll the ball up a little bit, almost towards my hip. So I'll put up a diagram so you guys can see specifically where the piriformis is. And then I'm just gonna pop this leg on top. So what I'm doing here is more or less just bringing some circulation into the area, just with a little bit of pressure. And you can see I'm staying in a consistent motion here. So at no point am I just kind of pausing on top, because you might notice you'll get some tingling down the leg. And that is typically a result of you being on that sciatic nerve. So hang out here for about 90 seconds to 2 minutes, just to bring some circulation into there. And then what we're gonna do is get into our stretch. So I'm gonna come into this position as if I'm kind of doing a conventional pigeon pose or piriformis stretch. But instead of me just kind of passively hanging out here and then say taking my upper body forward and away, what I'm going to do is actually start rotated towards you, and then I'm going to rotate my hips to my right and bring my whole upper body over this way. Then I'm going to keep some of that tension and I'm going to use it to open myself back up. So whatever tension gets created by me coming in, I'm then going to utilize to push myself away. So I can feel a little bit of length get created right about there. And then with my right knee, I'm pressing down to then push my hips back up. And with this back leg, you can even work a little bit of rotation. So I can go from here, I can rotate that leg in, and then I'll rotate back out. And I would work through probably about 10 to 12 repetitions here. The more extreme the angle is with the knee, the more you are gonna target the glute fibers, but the less hamstring you're gonna get. I kind of look for that sweet spot in the middle. And if you have sensitivity through the piriformis or through the hips to begin with, I wouldn't suggest starting at the most extreme angle to begin with. So start kind of at that in-between point, and this is gonna get our hips and the piriformis primed for the exercises that we have ahead. So for our second exercise, we're gonna get into a quad pad abduction. So there'll be 2 different variations here. The first variation might be one that you are already familiar with, which is just where I'm in a all fours position. And then I'm just essentially going to lift my knee up till I feel the lateral tissues on my glute contract. And then I'm just going to bring that back in, and then we'll just alternate. So then I'll just go to my other side. And you can just work side to side there. Now, once you kind of feel a baseline of activation come into that area, it should feel pretty primed from the exercise that we did previously. What we're gonna start to do is take our knee into extension, and then I'm gonna work a circle coming back. So my leg is gonna come up. Once I get to about here, I'm gonna start to extend, and then I'm gonna wrap my leg back in, and my knee is actually gonna rotate in here, because the act of me rotating my knee in is actually gonna create length through my piriformis. So by me taking my knee out, external rotation, I contract it, then I try to maintain some of that contraction, and then I wrap it back in, and I go back internal rotation. So now we're taking the tissue through its entire spectrum, or through the entire range of motion, both through the external and internal rotation. So I'll give you a front view here as well. So again, I'll go left side. So left leg comes up. I feel my glute kind of contract. I'm going to extend, trying not to let my knee drop too much here. So I'm going to extend out, and then this is going to sweep in as I go back internal rotation. And I can just work this one side, so I can sweep forward, extend out, and then wrap that right back in. And I can feel a lot of the tissues around my hips being tested, again through that entire spectrum, but also on my closed chain leg as well, or the knee that is attached to the ground. We want to really try to make sure that the hips aren't shifting or over rotating here too much. Ideally, that's going to stay relatively fixed for this corrective exercise. So for our third and final exercise, we are going to do a adduction lunge. So for this, we are going to pop up to our feet. And what I'm going to get you to do is come into our split stance position. So again, I have about 80 to 90% of my weight on this lead leg. And to start with, all I want you to do is rotate the hip into this lead leg. So I'm going to take this hip back, and by doing so, I'm creating a little bit of tension into my hamstring and my glute. And I just want you to notice here where my upper body is in relation to my hips. So my hips aren't really forward this way, because this will give me more quad tension. Ideally, my hips are behind me. And you can see how my hips kind of sit into that right side. So now that we have our hips located in this position, I'm going to take my left leg out, I'm going to touch, I'm going to keep my hips here, and I'm going to pull that left leg back in. Then I'm just going to repeat that. So this leg is going to come out, and then I'm going to pull right back in. And what you're going to have to be mindful of is that this knee, as well as the hips, don't start to shift or do something like this, where we're then shifting out this way, because this is going to create a over activation of our piriformis. And in part, why you might be dealing with a piriformis issue or piriformis syndrome is because of a lack of proper tension in through all those gluteal muscles. So what I'm doing here is I'm connecting my adductor and everything on this posterior side to that tension. Once we kind of get the gist of that, we can build on it just a little bit. So what we're going to do is I'm going to start with my hips square, and instead of me starting in the pelvic rotation, I'm going to pull myself into it. So now I'm linking my adductor with this posterior side tension. Now if you have a forest bed or something grippy that you can kind of pull against, you're going to definitely feel that feedback into there. But you can also use a slider. So if you're at a gym, they have those little sliders, you can just slide your foot right across. I would work probably about 10 to 12 repetitions here on either side, and I would just start with the first variation where I'm just loaded, pulling that in, watching that this lead knee isn't doing anything like that. We certainly want to make sure that we're staying neutral and that we're just gently rotating and maintaining that rotation as we pull this leg in. I can also play with the angle of this leg, so I can pull it from different directions. So I can go 1 o'clock, I can go 3 o'clock, I can go 4, and now I'm working different points of stability in through the pelvis. And what we're doing here is we're getting the gluteal muscles and the piriformis to kind of harmonize together. So this would be a great corrective exercise to get the overall function of the muscles around the hips to work better with one another. And I would say that's the name of the game when it comes to addressing your piriformis syndrome. First, we want to think about how we can create length, but not just any type of length, ideally a length tension. Then we want to start to think about how we can create a isometric point of stability In this case, it's around our pelvis. And then, as always, we want to think about how that links to the bigger picture, which is starting to link things like the pelvis, the knee, the ankle, some upper body rotation. You guys know the deal. So if you look back on the routine that we went through today, we pretty much checked all those boxes. I would say the only thing that we missed was something rhythmic, but there is tons of content on this channel where you can pull a rhythmic exercise and you can apply it to this. I would say anything where you're standing and going through a hinge pattern would apply here. That's all for this week's video. If you guys liked it, make sure to throw it a like. You can subscribe to the channel for more content similar to this in the future. Until next time, make sure you are prioritizing and then you are optimizing for you. I will catch you guys in the next one. I think this is our new playground. See you then. Peace.